Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to TableTakes, presented by Gen Con. My name is Christian, and I am joined today by Banzai and Derek. No Emma today.
No.
Nope.
Well, hopefully, luckily, we don't have any stories about magic.
Yep.
Oh.
We'll be safe.
That's a lie.
Yeah.
We have a big story about magic. We've got lots of headlines for you today before you get into your weekend of gaming, and so we want to tell you what's happening in the world of tabletop. Mm-hmm. So we're going to start off today with a little something from Banzai.
Yes.
Got some news for us? Let's hear about it.
I do. So Rebellion's opening a board game division.
Mm-hmm.
So Rebellion, most notable for Sniper Elite, Rogue Trooper, and Alien vs. Predator.
Mm-hmm. I remember playing that game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they're coming out with a board game version of the Sniper Elite. Which requires, like, if you ever played hidden movement mechanics, like Fury of Dracula, games like that.
Is that where your opponent has to close their eyes during your turn?
Yeah, you have to close your eyes. No, it's mostly like you have a one versus like many players, and they have to like find the location of where the person is hiding.
Yep,
and
that
they
sounded
only
like
get-
Fury of Dracula and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't recall if they've announced how many players Sniper Elite has.
There's not a lot of details with this game right now, and they also said that they have something called bag manipulation,
Yep.
which is just kind of like there's.
Well,
I just thought of 5 jokes about that particular phrase.
well,
I'm not going to tell you any of them.
from the picture and from that title, from that phrase with regards to board games,
Yes.
it would suggest that this is kind of a game like Orleans or something like that, where instead of deck building or instead of grabbing tokens from the center or something like that,
You grab it
you
from
just have a bag that you have tokens in. You have to pull some out to get resources, accomplish a task, or whatever else.
Yeah, but they say bag manipulation. Do you have to like hold the bag in a
No.
special
I bet
way?
you-
You're not
bet you
cupping the
can
bag.
palm-
It's
you
you
can
can
palm and
manipulate.
cheat.
You can manipulate what is put in the bag.
I bet you this is a way of saying like you can kind of cheat with the bag shuffle.
Probably not.
That's what I was thinking.
I don't think so.
Yeah, nah, that's pretty sure.
No, it doesn't sound like cheating. Specifically allowing cheating would go great for some games, but doesn't strike me as a Sniper Elite way.
Well, I mean, snipers
mean-
are kind of cheating.
Yeah.
But like they cheat from like shooting from a distance, not like
Yeah, no, it's-
juggling their bullet before they shove it in.
That's fair. That is fair.
But yeah, there's not much detail about this this game, but it's mostly just speculation. Have to see. We are seeing this trend that like a lot of games are turning into board games. I wonder if that's just like a new thing that is going on, like how the toy industry used to do the game figures and then make the cartoons and the movies. I wonder if we're just going to see more of these releases come out.
Well, it certainly seems to be standard, or well, not standard yet, but like it's very, very becoming expected that a big video game will have some sort of board game thing. Divinity: Original Sin, and we're talking about it's up on Kickstarter now.
Yeah, which I mean, if it's like I said, if it's anything like the video game, it's probably worth picking up as a board game because
yeah.
it's basically just an awesome board game.
I mean, it seems great because what we're doing is we're getting more licensed board games that are coming out being produced either directly by the video game publisher or in close association with them, and they are tending to be good.
Yeah.
So I almost kind of expect that we'll reach an equilibrium where almost every video game company might either have a partner or might have their own board game division.
Right.
And the board game will come out kind of at the same time as the video game.
Okay.
So it's following that trend that went from the 90s to the early 2010s, and where a movie would come out and then
Yeah.
a video
Yep.
game based on
Tie-in,
the movie
yep.
would follow it shortly after and
Yeah.
be the worst game of all time.
And now the video games have grown up, and now they have their own tie-ins when they come out.
Aw.
Yeah. Oh, I mean.
Hopefully, they maintain the quality trend, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, the qualities of the board games are obviously much higher than the movies. Like,
the
I'll
movies.
take
Or
the
the old video
Fallout
game
board
tie-in.
game over the Super Mario Brothers movie any day
Oh,
of the week.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Well.
Yeah, I said it. Don't get mad. I can't tell if you're frowning. You're wearing that mask.
Emma's not here, so I feel like someone should say, but the World of Warcraft movie.
Oh, but
I
the
can't
World of-
actually utter those words without
World of
catching a
Warcraft
flame.
movie. Oh, my heart hurt just like for a second.
Breathe. Just breathe. You're going to be fine.
But seeing as how she was
Emma, we miss
absent,
you
I
today.
feel like we needed to represent her.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
the other interesting thing about the Rebellion news, though, is that the board game division is being headed up by Duncan Malloy.
Malloy, yeah.
who was one of the founders and creative leads of Osprey Games, which we were talking about, is not a new company. They've been around for a while. They've been doing a lot of...
Even their logo looks old.
Well, so they were doing very old school games for a long time. Very like war game stuff, where it would be like, this is the rules for this particular couple years in this military conflict kind of thing.
Right.
But then they also came out with a whole series of not quite RPG supplements, but things that would be much more useful for RPGs, or they would have things that were they would take bits of history, like they had, I think, a book on King Arthur. They just grabbed King Arthur and then kind of laid it out like it's a resource, basically. Kind of like the old GURPS books, but without rules, I don't think.
Okay.
They had a big book on like orc culture and
basically just
from history.
Splat text without rules.
Yep. Yeah. And then they even further had a series of actually really good board games they put out. They had I think The King is Dead, or I think it was The King is Dead.
Long Live the King.
And they had Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space.
Starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Yes. Absolutely. Which
Isn't that called Doom?
No. This is Escape. This is not shoot the aliens. This is escape the aliens.
Escape the aliens.
It was very good.
But, I mean, you just escape into the vacuum of space.
Yeah, it's called Death.
Yeah.
Escape into the sweet release of death is not usually a climactic end or victory.
Oh, okay.
But if that's the goal, I mean, everybody in horror movies wins except the bad guy.
The bad guy.
Yeah. So anyway, Rebellion, like, tapping into somebody who's been in the industry for a while.
Yes.
And has had an experience kind of building a more board gamey brand and kind of the current environment, and putting them in charge of their effort to do the same is very, very interesting.
Okay. But yeah, no, it's interesting, and I want to see more details come out about this game. And hopefully, if we see more success with this, that means more games like these.
It's supposed to be playable at PAX Unplugged, or they'll have a preview of it. I think. Something
I
like that.
love that all these big multimedia companies are actually creating board game divisions using industry professionals who have who've been doing that exact same thing for years. I mean, these guys have been working their butts off for 20, 30 years, some of them, and take the money.
Well, they're actually using people who have experiences in this field to help them and collaborate, making decent products.
It's almost like if you treat the tie-in product with respect, it turns out good.
Oh, wow.
If we could just fit some gender equality in, we would be just golden, wouldn't we?
Nope, this is America. We don't do that.
This is America.
In other news of us talking about what we're not really informed on.
Yes.
Yeah. Here's the story. Here's it is.
Here's it
okay,
is.
I'm just. You want me to say this, because I don't even know if I'm gonna get the words right.
Okay.
Okay. WotC bans key cards from Throne of Eldraine in Standard. Now, me looking at that sentence, I don't know what it means. Except, now that I've worked here for a while, I know exactly what that means. It means that Wizards of the Coast has banned some cards from their Standard Edition of Play, which I know what that is now.
Which is not modern.
Which is not modern.
Or Legacy.
Okay.
It is none of those things. It is the most modern. It's Standard.
It's
Anyway, you can't. There's a couple of cards you can't play them anymore.
Nope.
It turns out that I guess there's some sort of elk overpopulation problem in the Magic world right now, and so
it's what happens when you get rid of all the wolves and bears. The elk explode.
Your fancy antlered
You need
heroes
population
are no
control.
longer able to be played in Standard. You're going to have to play them in Modern.
Casual, maybe.
Casual.
Modern is not on this list, so Modern might be viable in Modern.
Okay, see, they might be viable in Modern still. I'm sure that these cards probably didn't cost too much. Oh my God, yes they did.
Yeah, so in Standard, Oko, well actually Oko is kind of banned in multiple formats. Oko, the Thief of Crowns, which is I believe the one that turns everything into an elk.
Any relation to Yoko, Thief of Beetles?
No.
Okay.
And Emma gave us very specific instructions that we were to say, Oko, more like Noko. So we feel like
We
we
need
have
an actual
done her
rim
proud.
shot on set, I think.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Apparently Oko's a really cool card art too.
I think that joke, if it was delivered by Emma, would have been funny.
Oh, absolutely.
The chat says Oko lives in our hearts.
Yep.
Oko lives in our hearts.
So Once Upon a Time is also banned. Apparently, like if it's your first spell, you can cast it for free. You can. So I guess it allows you to, if you get it very early.
It sounds like a really useful card. I can see why they would ban it.
And then Veil of Summer is also banned.
Is that the one where all of your wizards start wearing shorts?
Oh, the Veil of Summer.
That's what I do. So apparently you can just steal a bunch of cards from your opponent and make them hexproof, and it doesn't work out very well. So those 3 are banned.
Okay. This all makes sense to me now.
From the Brawl format, which I believe is also new, Oko Thief of Crowns is banned. Legacy Ren and 6 are banned. I'm not sure what problem they're causing.
I think they were side characters on That So Raven.
True. Yep.
Oh, jeez.
Or they might be like Teen Titans that didn't make the cut.
Ah, yes.
Also a possibility.
Wait, no, Raven. Oh, no, yeah, they did.
See, you get it?
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, it wasn't a great joke, but it was there.
I was like, wait, the
No, it
comic
didn't
books,
have
I
it didn't
need
have
to
quite
remember.
the laugh-getting ability of Noko.
No.
But you know.
So then in vintage format, apparently Narset, Parter of Veils is restricted. So I guess that just prevents your opponent from drawing multiple cards, which probably shuts down a whole lot of options.
Combos instead.
So were we to have a resident Magic expert, we would have a great deal more detail
Yes.
to provide, a great deal more entertaining, colorful commentary.
Yes.
But in the absence of that, you'll have to settle for us being like, these are the things, the words make sense, believe us.
Cards. No-go cards.
I like playing Magic. I just haven't done it in a long enough time now where I feel so behind the curve that. I mean, I'm glad that I get to come here every week and learn more about the game that I don't really play that much anymore.
So
Makes
we're
me happy.
so sorry. We just are Magic experts. Sorry.
Emma, I hope we didn't let you down today.
We sorry. We hope we.
Hey, we
did.
followed her instructions to the letter.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, but unfortunately, like 4 of those letters spelled Noko. So what do we even do?
We tried.
Maybe we should move on.
Yes.
Let's move on to some happy news. Happy news in the world of Dungeons and Dragons as the Eberron sourcebook has been
Rising from the last war.
yes.
Yes.
It's been released.
It's released.
This
It's
is-
got hard
This
copies.
is very, very exciting for me
Yeah.
because I'm a big fan of the setting. Obviously, I'm a big fan.
I'm running a campaign of it right
Yeah,
now.
And I've used things from that setting ever since it came out. I'm a big, big fan.
Yeah.
Keith Baker created it for the 3rd edition of the game. It was one of its own standalone, like first-party world book, source books that they came out with that whole line for Dungeons and Dragons, and it was.
Was it the only original setting in 3rd edition?
Yes, it was.
It was.
Yeah. Well, technically 3.5.
Well, at least, and if it wasn't the
Whatever.
only, it was definitely the first.
Sure.
But yeah.
So it's back, and they've been playtesting a lot of the stuff on Unearthed Arcana for years now, technically.
Yes.
Well, and they also like Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron.
The
had
Wayfinder's
come
Guide
out
to
a while
Eberron
ago.
had come out. It's got lots of. Why do you need this instead of that? Well,
Yeah.
it's because it's got more. It's got more of absolutely everything. It's got 6 new playable races that are all out of Unearthed Arcana now. An Artificer base class that has been tweaked and works very well, from what I understand.
Yep.
It might need to be nerfed in the future because if you play it right, it's pretty awesome. The 6 new playable races are, of course, the Warforged, the semi-organic robotic creatures that were designed to fight wars for people.
Yep.
Obviously, the changelings, the half-fey creatures that can change their shape, the Kalishtar, the kind of psychic warriors who live up in the scary Crystal Mountains,
Who are
shifters
yeah.
who are basically half werewolf, I guess.
They're like beastmen.
Yeah, they're beastmen. They have
Yeah.
beast-like qualities of different types. Goblins.
Yes.
Goblins. Not just for Pathfinder anymore.
Yeah.
I was
Now-
going to say the Pathfinder fans are like, we've had goblins for how long?
yeah, no,
Ooh.
not just for Pathfinder anymore. Now you can have them playable in your own. And of course, orcs, because orcs rule.
Yeah.
Plus, they are masters of the running away martial art of orcs known as Orcor.
And people don't have to be racist against the goblins and the orcs now.
That's
Oh,
the, that's
no,
one
they
of the,
they
okay.
still will be.
No. That's
No,
that's
no.
one of the beautiful things about Eberron.
Yes.
Is the traditionally evil races are not necessarily considered evil. Like if you're a red dragon, there is no reason you can't be like, a good aligned cleric. It doesn't matter. You can be a demon with a heart of gold. Eberron has no problems with that, so there's no necessarily inherently evil creatures.
We're progressive in this.
They're people, and they get treated like people, and they act like people, so they do terrible things.
Yeah,
and
I
they
was
do
going to say,
great things.
people tend to treat each other pretty badly.
Yeah. No, of
But now
course.
it's not
and this
based
is a
on
place
what-
that's,
yeah.
this whole world is just recovering from a war that lasted over 100 years. maybe people have grown a little bit more tolerant because they're sick of fighting each other. That's one of the things that has always attracted me to this particular world. There's also rules for 11 new patrons, which are a shared party background.
I haven't, so I bought the book. I haven't dug into it.
Yeah.
But they put a lot of time into the patron element. There's a lot of pages that are dedicated to that.
Well, it's a big part of the system, and they didn't have a rule-specific thing for it. They talked a lot about it in the flavor text of the first editions of the game, but having this as an actual rule set now makes it a lot more viable
patron,
to play.
just to be clear, like, they're talking about basically having an employer for your adventuring party to go out and do
This isn't like
things.
having a demonic patron when you're a warlock. This is somebody who pays for you to go out on your adventures. It's like a guy or a group or a organization that you work for.
Some unifying mission structure.
It leaves a lot of room for political intrigue, whether from actual political groups or underground organizations or even these adventurers guilds.
Yes.
It's a very, very rich and deep world. Of course, lots of new monsters and NPCs, an adventure that comes with it, a bunch of battle maps. You can see the city of Sharn, the horrible Mournlands.
Yes.
It's all in there. There has been mixed reactions, of course, on some of this stuff. People don't like that the Warforged have been nerfed a little bit. They say
A lot of it.
They don't get as much of the armor and the tools
Yeah, so
stuff
like
as they did before. But
some of those rule changes, I understand.
Yeah, because they
they're
were
unfortunate,
OP.
but
the
thing I was actually a little disappointed with is they took out the sub races for Warforged. So there's just Warforged.
I'm a little bummed about that. I'm going to house
those were
rule them
neat.
back in anyway, especially since the main character I'm playing in my D&D campaign is an envoy Warforged right now. So.
So, like, the Wayfighter's Guide to Eberron that had come out before, I think was very good for people who were already kind of immersed in Eberron. They had the old material. It was basically a way to use your existing material with 5th edition. It was kind of just bare bones rules to get you up and running.
And
Yeah.
now
this is the
whole
full
thing.
real release.
Chad has asked if Keith Baker was involved in this one. Of course.
Yes.
Of course. This is Keith Baker's world. I mean, it's D&D's world, but Keith Baker made it, and he is definitely involved. So much so, in fact, that he is actually going to be putting out a supplement book himself to this.
On the DM's Guild.
Yeah, on the DM's Guild, you'll be able to check it out on PDF for free or even get a print-on-demand copy.
So it's called Exploring Eberron.
Exploring Eberron.
What it is called.
By Keith Baker. You can check that out.
Did WotC confirm if Eberron's going to be available for everyone to create content in DM's Guild? I think they did. I just don't remember the timeline.
I have not read or heard the announcement,
I
so I
seen
cannot
anything
confirm or deny that right now.
Not on the top of my head.
But that'll be real interesting too, or real exciting once they kind of open up the doors on that.
Yeah. And then what is it? Going back to some of the initial reactions, I have a little nostalgia heart for changelings.
Okay.
Because I played a changeling when I was like,
A wee bab.
a wee bab.
Banzai, I feel like you're playing one now.
No. I can't morph.
I don't know that for sure.
All the morph. It's called makeup. No. But yeah, they're the only character now that potentially has like a +3 to any like charisma trait. So they can, or like basically they're a character that can have an 18 charisma score,
Using a standard array. Yeah,
standard array.
Absolutely.
The only character that can have an 18.
That's the only race that's able to do that. That's pretty cool.
Have they confirmed that was intentional yet?
Yes, that was intentional. They confirmed that they worded
Changelings
it
are charming MFers. That's
that
just what they do.
you can use it for any trait, and it doesn't say excluding charisma. That they confirmed, yes, this is a +2 for charisma and 1 to any trait, so you can do that as a +3 charisma.
To answer chat, there are not Modrons. You are thinking of Planescape. The setting that's near and dear to my heart.
Oh, no, that's my first love, though. I love me some Planescape.
New Paribo, also from Planescape. My wife keeps asking about the things that she sees because I'm looking at Planescape all the time. So she should probably just assume that it's Planescape. Unless it's in a desert, it's Planescape.
Otherwise, it's Dark Sun?
Yes.
Yes.
Basically, is what is Derek looking at it? Desert, Dark Sun. Not desert, Planescape.
Not either, probably.
Has it been watered?
Vampire.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
It's been released. It's out there. Eberron is available to the world. Pick it up at your local gaming store.
Before we move on, though,
Yes.
for folks who don't know what Eberron is, because so many people have come into D&D with 5th edition.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it is a very different
How would
fantasy
you
setting.
summarize? Well, I mean, both of you have played Eberron, so how all three of us have. How would you pitch Eberron to someone who's new or someone who came
High
in?
magic, low level arcanopunk.
Okay.
It's got all the flavor of steampunk, not everybody is, it's not all just swords and sorcery. Magic is everywhere. Magic is everything. It's their main power source. It's how they get around from place to place. They have trains that ride on lightning bolts that go across the landscape. Obviously, the place is recovering from a war. What it doesn't have is a lot of super powerful, high-level wizard types running the place.
No.
Like, the most powerful NPC in the first edition of the game was an 11th level character who happened to be a vampire.
I was thinking of it more as a modern fantasy. Like if fantasy, like the fantasy actually like developed their own technology based off not on electricity, but on
magic.
On magic. So that's how I view it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So-
like to me, it's very much like imagine kind of an alternate World War I-ish, like after World War I.
Post-industrial revolution, but also the greatest war in the entire history of the wars has happened, and you're recovering from that.
Yep.
It's pre-Great Depression.
And then another war happens. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
well, obviously there's going to be more wars. This is, it's Dungeons and Dragons.
So I think that people should check out Eberron if they, they want to play D&D, but they want to play it in a setting that's a little bit more modern in a couple different ways. One, quote-unquote technology, because there's just magically fueled technology everywhere. You have a telegraph system through sending stones, basically. You have an infrastructure set up to use magic kind of a little more in a modern mindset.
Yes.
And then you also
have public
have
transit.
Oh,
and then you
public transit.
also have a
Oh.
little bit of a modern mindset in the nations and how they interact with each other. It definitely takes like an early 20th century view of politics between the different nations. So if you want a little more modern kind of take in your fantasy, then Eberron I think works real well.
Not to mention all of the different factions aren't what you would consider the cookie cutter fantasy factions.
Yes.
Like the Kalishtar, obviously, very, very psychically attuned and have the otherworldly thing going on.
They're possessed by spirits.
But they're basically the only ones like that.
Yeah.
Your shifters are just, displaced people all over the world. They have something called city elves because people grew up in cities, and so it's not like they all live in these tree houses out in the middle of the
But they're still
woods
stuck
doing
up.
high magic. Are they?
Kind of.
Why? Because your DM played them stuck up?
Yeah.
Because they're not.
At least my DM played them stuck up.
Yeah.
I do have to say I was always the fact that the elves worship death was always really weird to me. Like
Well-
the death cult for the elves, it always seemed more appropriate for the dwarves. We're getting into we're
Yeah,
very
sorry,
much getting in the weeds,
we're
but
getting
like
back to the league. Yeah.
always weird to me.
But what about the country that basically presses you into service post-death to work in the army?
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's like
guess
the
which
cool-
country I love the most.
Yeah, it's my
That
favorite.
one.
My favorite country too. Plus, they have the best. They have the Reckonmark Academy there too, which is the best military academy in all of Eberron.
What about the dragon riding halflings? There's that.
Oh,
What's not to
yeah.
love about that?
Yeah. That's,
Oh no, wait. I mean dinosaur, not dragons.
no, they're not. Yeah.
Right. Of course
I messed
not.
that
I'm
up.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shame.
All right, my Eberron badge is taken away from me. I'm no longer an
No.
Eberron expert.
No.
You still get to keep it.
Yeah.
Okay.
The book just came out.
Great.
Look
Yeah.
how knowledgeable you are. Good job,
good.
buddy.
Round of applause.
Positive reinforcement here at TableTakes. That's what we're all about. So
So-
there it is. Yeah, that's Eberron for you. I mean, if there's more questions you have, you can look them up now.
Yep.
They're on the internet for you. You go out and get that book, or go out and look at what that book's about. Check out Keith Baker's other work. He makes worlds. That's what.
And this is the first book I bought just through D&D Beyond.
Oh.
I haven't bought it physically.
Wow.
Maybe I will. I don't know. But
Well, the artwork looks beautiful, so I'm all about that. I want it to hold in my hand.
It's included. You can hold the iPad in your hand and look at it.
But I need the smell of the paper.
Yeah, me
You
too.
can put another book nearby that you can whiff off of while
Look.
you're reading it.
Yeah, and as much
but-
as I complain about trees, I gotta say I really do like books.
So
Yep.
So there you go. There's Eberron for you. What could be more exciting than that? Derek?
well,
try and top it.
speaking of old becoming new again,
I like that segue.
yeah, see,
that was
great.
real smooth.
I learned from the master.
Mike, I miss him too.
So Warhammer, we've talked about Warhammer Fantasy, Age of Sigmar, for a number of releases now.
Yeah.
But Age of Sigmar is a relatively new game. I think it's 4 or 5 years old, and it was born out of Warhammer Fantasy, which was like the original kind of Warhammer game. Like way back in the day.
Well, they just called it Warhammer.
But what they did, Games Workshop did a really interesting thing with Warhammer, where over the years, you play a lot of games they like to be like, oh, like the end of the world is just around the corner. The heroes are the only thing preventing it.
Right.
So you do that for 30 years.
Yes.
And eventually you're kind of like, well, I mean, is this ever going to happen? So Games Workshop was like, great, let's have it. So they did a whole storyline of Warhammer Fantasy where Chaos won and destroyed the world. And that's what gave birth to kind of the
So is it like the
Sigmar.
first story they ever wrote?
Yeah, they took 30 years to do it.
It took 30 years to write one story and they got the end wrong?
Yeah.
Well, so
How do you mess something like that up?
they the world is destroyed. Sigmar's reborn.
Yep.
Things are a little weirder. So like, actually, Planescape might not be a bad example. Like, Sigmar's a little planescaping, and there's all these different planes and realms, and you travel between them, and things are weird and magical. Which is a big departure from Warhammer Fantasy. So when Warhammer Fantasy died and Sigmar came out,
Yeah.
you can predict how a lot of the fans reacted to that. They were warm, supportive, welcoming, embracing the new very, very quickly.
That does sound
yep,
like gaming fans in general.
Absolutely.
Totally.
So none of that happened. But Sigmar has had a huge fan base now. It's grown
What's that
significantly.
buzzing? Oh, got my. Oh, sorry, my sarcasm detector. Let me get that turned off for you. No, I'm not supposed
good.
to run that during the
Oh,
show.
darn it.
So Sigmar, is going strong now.
Yes.
But people still want Warhammer Fantasy to kind of come back.
I think the only reason Sigmar is doing as well as it is because people are still complaining about it.
There's definitely an interesting.
They're just doing it while playing. now.
Yeah.
basically.
Gosh
But-
darn it, I wish they didn't have this.
They used to have this.
I remember the day.
But I think Games
We
Workshop
sound just like them.
Yeah.
Games Workshop has looked at how Horus Heresy
Yes.
and Warhammer 40K have worked, where you have 40K, which is like the modern, current kind of Warhammer. The rules are streamlined, but the Horus Heresy, where you play like the 30K version,
Yes.
still plays with the old rules. So they're managing to kind of run, in a sense, both editions at the same time, kind of, giving them very different themes and very different mechanics. So it looks like they're going to try
And
to
get
do
similar price points depending on which way you go.
Oh, Horus Heresy is more expensive. So it looks like they're going to try to do something similar with Warhammer Fantasy.
Yes.
So they've announced they're bringing it back. They've shown the logo. They teased square bases. So anybody who has square bases should be excited.
Oh, squares.
I know, right?
Wait, how is that a thing?
It's a thing. So instead of a round base, it's a square base.
So it can
no,
fit.
I get it. It makes a perfect amount of sense.
Yep.
It's a very stable structure.
Yeah, I think what is you would use the square bases to put the units in formation,
Yes.
and then you put them on a tray and move them that way.
It'd be
Okay.
easier.
It was a very important thing.
But the round ones are worse because you can't line
Well,
them
you
up.
can they rotate.
I think the round ones are worse because change.
Oh, yeah, no, I've heard about that. It's not great.
So, Games Workshop has announced the logo. They teased some things.
Yeah.
They've also said that this is not going to happen anytime soon. This is a 3+ year timeline thing.
So are they gonna? And here's what I want to happen.
Oh,
I want
what
them to
if
take
they-
the Age of Sigmar and the 40K, and then like the time loop ends, and now they're just starting over again.
That would be
So now
easy.
everybody has to go back to fantasy and like wait 30 years before
you-
these toys are playable.
Can
Nope,
you
definitely not
imagine
doing
the
that.
outrage
No?
if they're like starting this? And
I'm imagining
then-
it right now.
And then it like, oh, I'm sorry, we just ended up not going that pathway.
The whole thing looks like the first 45 minutes of Independence Day to me. So
Yeah,
I imagine that and I just go, the internet.
I'm sure the internet will find something else to get extremely angry about.
Yeah.
But so like I was really surprised by this really long timeline. It seems real weird to announce a product to kind of answer one of the longest running criticisms of your fan base and be like, hey, it's going to be 3 years down the road. Because you're just kind of opening yourself up
is that
to like
even
3
really
years
an
of complaining.
announcement?
But it is.
It's like it's
the,
not like
the
they-
weird thing is like it seemed to work out really well for them with the Sisters of Battle when they announced
Yeah,
plastic ones
that's
because
the
they're like,
thing.
this is something you've been asking for years. We're finally doing it. Maybe next year sometime, and people reacted remarkably well to that. So I feel like they're
How do they like those new Sisters of Battle?
well, considering that it sold out in 36 minutes.
Yeah.
they like those a lot.
They
So I
like
mean,
them.
basically, we're just giving them news that a Kickstarter has eventually happened, and,
Yep.
and they're
Yeah.
saving up their pennies now so they can afford original Warhammer.
Yep. Or if you have original Warhammer on your shelf and a tier was scrolling down your tree, then now you can.
Now you can buy another copy of
Yep.
it.
You- you're just waiting on your deathbed, be like, I can survive 3 more years.
I don't
Yeah.
have to get it to think that it's a good thing. So
Yes.
right on. Good for you, Warhammer. I'm glad that you're.
Good for you.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's just from a perspective of somebody who mainly comes from role playing, it's really interesting having a company support effectively multiple editions of the same game. It's a really interesting strategy because we just almost never see that on the RPG side.
No, usually when they pick up the new thing, they're not supporting the old thing anymore because the new thing is what important. Buy the new thing. You already bought the old thing.
I just my skepticism. Yes, it works for the Warhammer 40K and 30K. I'm wondering if they can actually balance that because what works for one thing might not necessarily work for the other.
Sure, but like that's not a balance question because they're just going to be completely different games.
Okay.
So like Horus Heresy and 8th edition, completely different rules.
Okay.
It's my understanding that Horus Heresy is the 7th edition rules. Yeah. I think it's at least heavily based on 7th edition rules. I haven't really dug into them at all. But it's just two completely different game lines. Right. So it's not like when a Horus Heresy unit comes out, they have to give 40k stats. They often will to encourage the 40k players to use it, and then there's that weird time question of a completely new unit is introduced in 30k, and you're like, where did it go in the intervening like 10,000 years?
Chaos ate it.
Yeah, chaos ate it. Yeah,
chaos ate it.
Sure.
Boom.
So they'll be able to do the same kind of thing with Warhammer Fantasy.
Okay. Well, it's exciting to see.
That is exciting. Well, man, that's great. I mean, we got all sorts of new stuff that's come out. We got new stuff that's coming out. This is all good news.
Good news.
I love good news.
I'm sorry.
What?
We got one bad news. Really serious bad news that I have to tell you about. So we went from happiness, sunshine, rainbows, all that stuff, new stuff.
Well, I don't know if Warhammer would ever be called happiness, sunshine, rainbow.
It is the happy, sunshine, rainbow version of Warhammer,
It
though.
gives you a glimpse of hope. A glimpse of hope. But on actually, like, take a break, snap, on a serious note, JR Honeycutt was, I don't know if you heard the news that has been around, but there has been allegations against JR Honeycutt of harassment and emotional abuse. This accusation was made in an extensive weblog post by the victim, and it was corroborated by several other people, and basically with that, the reaction has been that several companies that have worked with JR Honeycutt have cut ties, and the word has basically spread, and people are reacting in an appropriate way in fashion that I am very glad to see that, people are now like, hey, yeah, this is a bad thing. We're going to stop it, and we are going to punish the people that have done such,
And to give some context, JR Honeycutt is a game designer.
There you go.
And an event organizer. So he is a relatively prominent member of the industry.
Well-known game designer and event organizer.
Yes.
For quite some time.
For quite some time.
Yep. So it was quite a shock for those allegations to come out. But the industry is still figuring out how it wants to deal with them, I think.
Yes.
But the initial steps have been pretty clear. So, giving some folks some sort of context to understand, the news and word that might be swirling around Twitter and the community is helpful.
Yes, it is helpful to get that word and to basically talk about this subject that a lot of people keep behind closed doors. So, especially if it is somebody who is a big name, who especially has a lot of years in the gaming industry, and also a person of power, being able to adjust that so they don't have that power anymore.
Now, while the allegations are new, the alleged abuse happened some time ago. Is that
Yes.
correct? So
I believe so.
yeah. So the best thing to do is to just not be shitty.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yep.
Don't be shitty. It will come back and get you. We will find you.
We will find you, and karma.
We the internet.
The internet.
You gotta be better people.
Well, sadly, we have a history of not finding them properly.
Yeah.
But hopefully that will change.
Yeah, hopefully with more people coming out and speaking about these things, and it being more acceptable, people being more understanding, that we get we catch these things in the butt before it gets more victims are produced.
At least somebody came forward this time.
Yes.
That is great. I think more people should do it. but I also think that less people should be abusing to begin with. So,
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, yeah. Sorry, serious topic.
It's a weird time. That's the way it goes. Gaming industry is just as vulnerable to this as anyone else, and we are a lot more vocal about it than a lot of other groups. So we have been seeing quite a bit of this over the last couple of years. I'm glad something is being done to change it, but obviously not enough. So I'm sure it's something that we'll talk about again at length.
Yeah, I think it's a topic that we want to cover because it's very important, and to the industry, it's very important to all of us as players. But it's also something to keep in mind that everybody who is involved in the industry, as a player, a consumer, a producer, a publisher, a designer, it's something that we're all going to have to actually put work into.
Yeah, no, it requires, especially for people who've been in the industry a while, it requires stewardship and actual being active with it. You know, vocally support the people who are, who are speaking out, and vocally condemn the people who are being crappy people.
Yep. And yeah, that's all we can say about the matter. We'll have to expand this topic later on.
Great.
Yep.
Great.
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 Bundles, anyone?
Oh!
Let's move on to bundles. Bundles sound great, and they always help great causes. Let's see what we have today.
Oh.
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 Actually, the bundle itself is pretty awesome. It's a Pathfinder comics cache by Paizo Entertainment and Dynamite Comics.
Yes.
Dynamite is, of course, the publisher that put out the Pathfinder comic books when they were a thing. The art is beautiful. The stories are Pathfinder. So there you go. Adventures in Galorian is something you can find at your local comic book shop. Obviously, Paizo has created and made Pathfinder from the very, very beginning, and this is a bunch of cool first edition stuff that you get from Pathfinder, with their second edition having just come out. Not everybody's playing it yet. Maybe you don't have everything that Pathfinder ever published. I might not.
I think between a number of bundles, I have at least a big.
Yeah,
portion of it.
we have a lot of Pathfinder stuff.
There's a
But
lot.
so this bundle is really interesting to me because it's a collection of almost all of the core books that you would
Right,
need,
right.
and then a bunch of
bunch of the
comics
comics.
to kind of inspire you.
Yeah, and then a bunch of adventure stuff too. You've got your little Worldscape zines and your the Pathfinder Goblins series. I mean, it's all right in there, and it's $15 for $270 some worth of content. It's a pretty good deal.
Yes.
And it supports Rancho Obi-Wan, which is a very important charity that serves the public through the collection, conservation, exhibition, and interpretation of Star Wars memorabilia and artifacts.
Again, I'm just going to say, you laugh now.
I do.
But in 500 years, when the aliens come to excavate, they are going to lament the fact that we did not fund Rancho Obi-Wan enough.
No, they're just going to be glad that we're all dead because clearly we had lightsabers.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, honestly, I great Disney stuff, but Disney will capsulize that, and they, Disney will protect.
Sure, but Disney will protect
This does not
its
in any way
corporate
actually
interests.
support Disney. I am going to go on record. This is a charitable organization.
Oh yeah, this is different.
that is
Sorry.
conserving Star Wars artifacts.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there you go. It
Yep.
supports a good cause. And it's a bunch of Pathfinder stuff for next to nothing. So pick it up if you like Pathfinder.
It's like the
it probably has something that you don't have.
the highest level, I think, is like $15 for $276 worth of PDFs
Yeah.
and whatnot.
These are things that you can really only find in a Paizo dumpster 3 years ago.
Oh.
Or a used bookstore.
Or in a used bookstore,
Yes, half price books. Love the smell of that place.
which is essentially just a Paizo dumpster.
Depends on what time of year.
Yeah, but I like half price book. How dare you?
I love half-price
I-
books, but you can get all the first edition stuff there real cheap
So
right now.
I'm moving tomorrow, so they have gotten a lot of boxes of games and books from me.
Ah,
That makes sense.
that
So
makes sense.
if you want games, go to the Tukwila Press
the
Books,
Tukwila
basically.
Press
Swing by on
Books.
your way home.
They should have everything processed in just a couple short months.
Yep.
Yep.
So, Kickstarters?
Kickstarters.
Kickstarters.
Yes.
Yes. Introduce us, Kickstarter Queen.
Welcome to Kickstarter.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
a
you.
Banzai, you're a Christian.
Ah.
Oh, they know us here. I love this.
No,
hey,
I'm-
thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
The first Kickstarter that we have to go over has 3 days left. This is Stronghold Undead. I've forgotten how to pronounce the last name, so you're going to do it. This is one of the first games from Ignacy.
Ignacy. Oh, wait. Zurachek.
Zurachek. There we go. That's going to be what we hope is the correct way to pronounce it.
Yes.
It's pretty close for it's pretty close for what I was going for.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, which is to fit it into my mouth.
All right, great.
Zurachek.
Strongholds Undead. Strongholds was one of the first games that he designed. He's the kind of a key designer at Portal Games, by the way.
Oh.
People might recognize that name.
Oh,
as
I've
well.
heard of Portal.
Portal.
So this was one of the first games that he designed that got real big acclaim. It came out 2009. It was nominated for a bunch of awards, best game, best two-player game, that kind of stuff. And then Undead was an expansion that he released for only like 1,000 copies, and then it was out of print, and it was hard to find. So this Kickstarter is to make the expansion a standalone game, so you can just buy just it, update the components, kind of refresh everything, and put it back into print. So if you're a big fan of his designs, you're going to want to check this one out. If you're a big fan of asymmetrical strategy games, because it's a stronghold game, it's a defense. One player is a bunch of paladins who are defending a castle, and the other player is a endless wave of an undead horde who's trying to take it over. So they play necromancers. They play very differently from each other. So if any of those sound great, you should check it out. But the interesting thing I found...
I just like the word asymmetrical.
Yeah,
Asymmetrical.
asymmetrical is great.
For that.
That's a nice word. It's a word.
It's a cool word.
It's a cool word.
But the other thing I love about
It reminds me of my features.
the other thing I love about the project is it's got a section of why you might not like this game.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I thought that was...
We were talking about that earlier.
I think that is actually a really interesting thing to put on a Kickstarter. It's counterintuitive, but it lets you know if you want it or not right from the very beginning.
Not only that, but to me, to have a Kickstarter say, this is who this game is for.
Yes.
And this is who this game is not for.
As long as they're not leaving out a gender or a race, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But usually that demonstrates that they're self-aware enough of their game that they probably did a pretty decent job putting it together.
Yes. I mean, I honestly, in more products, I would like that because it makes me excited to buy things, or I could be like, all right, no, but I can still see what, like why it's the negatives or the positives, and then I could see if, like, hey, if somebody I know likes this game, like I have extreme, like, great points to be like, all right, I'll pick this up or I won't pick this up. And I think that honesty is, very, like, what's the word? Genuine?
Yeah, no, it's great. It's just not the most common thing in retail sales.
Yes.
No offense to the retail workers out there.
Yeah, no offense, but I mean, just as
Truth in advertising has never been a thing.
More companies should do that, though.
yes,
Because there's an authenticity to it, but it also requires a certain amount of confidence to do it. So it just makes me more comfortable with your thing.
Yeah, it's like,
and
hey,
your project.
we have this kind of game. It does these things. Do you not
Especially-
like these kind of games? Don't get this.
Especially for a Kickstarter where you might not be able to play it. It's not going to come out for a long time.
Yes.
I mean, so many Kickstarters, you view the project page, you don't get to play it. You imagine in your mind what this project's going to be. It gets delivered, it's not that. So the clearer you can be, the better.
yes.
Absolutely.
So, Strongholds, Undead, 3 days left.
3 days
Go
left.
check it out.
There you go. Check it out. Strongholds.
Oh,
Hey.
the other thing is the project compares itself to Star Wars Rebellion and Twilight Struggle to give you a sense of like where it is.
So
in
it's
the
like
project.
super long game to play.
They said 2 hours, not super long, but
Twilight
2 hours to
Struggle.
play, but like an hour to set up, right?
I don't know. I've just
don't
seen
know.
Twilight Struggles go like an 8-hour game
yeah.
struggle.
Well, it compares itself to that.
Okay,
I
'cause
think
like
in the
when-
sense
as-
of the level of complication, the fact
Okay.
that it's 2 players head to head, not necessarily the duration.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, I get that.
I get that too.
Yeah.
I think we're all on the same page here. That's great. Next Kickstarter,
Oh, what?
Deadlands, Lost Colony.
Your time has come.
My time has come. So, if you're not familiar with Deadlands, it is the Weird West setting using the Savage World system. It's been around for years and years. It basically invented the Savage World system as far as that goes. It is Weird West because it was an Old West setting with cowboys and guns and
Hucksters.
and hucksters who were basically gamblers who were a mix between wizards from D&D and Gambit from the X-Men.
Yes. That's actually really accurate.
I've been doing this a while. So Deadlands was the first in that series.
Yep.
The Weird West. What came out after that was a more of a end of the world scenario,
Hell on
right?
Earth.
Hell on
yeah,
Earth.
Hell on Earth. It was called Deadlands Hell on Earth.
Because that was the apocalyptic one. Like,
right.
Yes.
Which had more modern sensibilities to it. The hucksters had now become like scary psychic things of
So
immense
because
power.
did Deadlands have the Ghost Rock in Weird West? It was in there. I think
I
they.
think
they
so, yeah.
Yeah.
So like part of the idea was that in Deadlands they had just discovered this like ghost rock that was like magical ore in the world.
Right.
And then Hell on Earth was, well, we figured out how to put that in a bomb. It turned out bad. Maybe we shouldn't have
didn't go
done
well.
that.
What?
This that's coming out now, the Lost Colony, is a redo of their third in the series, which
Yeah.
was Deadlands in Space.
Space.
In space.
Space.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was something that could happen every
But
time.
it seems like something got smaller there.
Yeah, no,
The echo half
you
faster.
didn't really commit as much
I'm
the
sorry,
second time.
I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. It's all right, This is a safe space.
Space.
There we go. All right.
So Deadlands in That Which Shall Not Be Named.
Yes, in the great reaches of the outer rim worlds of something in space. So they put this out. It was originally published back in the day, and
But that was right when Deadlands was kind of done.
Yes.
and people were done with it at that point.
It didn't really get
It
like
did
a full
not.
shot.
It did not sell very well
No.
compared to the original. This is they're relaunching the entire setting time period of that. And yeah, it's basically just Deadlands in space. It's, you face off against. There's of course it's like there's corporate militaries, rogue traders, all sorts of scary stuff. The arrival of the new big bad, the Reckoners, which I imagine are just like Reavers bent on revenge.
Oh yeah! Wow.
Yeah, it's got a
Reavers
campaign
with
included
receipts.
with it. It's everything Deadlands.
But in space.
Space.
But you're space. But
Well,
you're abandoned. You're an abandoned colony because the space tunnel collapsed.
Right, because of course you find it. Of course you like fly up into space.
tunnel.
You find
That's
the giant
what it
space
is,
tunnel.
the
You fly
space
through the space tunnel.
Yeah, I know, but
Collapse.
we're in space. We're calling it wormholes now.
Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Come
Wormhole.
on.
But
Do worms
This
live
is
in it?
sci-fi.
sci-fi.
Do
I'm
worms
sorry.
live in the
I'm
wormhole?
sorry.
Yeah, they
the,
do.
The,
Space
the
worms.
wormhole collapsed.
What's a wormhole? Is it some kind of space tunnel?
Is
Yeah.
it like a space cave, space tunnel? It collapsed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, space cave might have no end.
Oh,
right?
space
a space tunnel,
cave.
obviously.
So, wait, so it's
There's going to be
worm-
a vast dark at the
Oh,
end of the
boy.
tunnel.
So wait, is a black hole? Black hole is then a space cave.
Oh, we don't say that anymore.
What?
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 So, you're confusing her.
I know,
Yep. Don't worry about it.
but I'm doing it on
But
purpose, and it's amusing to me.
So what I really loved about the Deadlands series is that the Hell on Earth and Lost Colony and whatnot kind of took totally different genres, but dealt with them completely seriously within the confines of alternate history, Wild Weird West.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
So-
they just kept on with that alternate history, Weird West, and then just made the world move on organically based on what they did in the first story. So where the end of it is, thousands of years later in space, you can still tell it came from the same hucksters
Yes.
and gunfighters.
So the basic premise is, at some point, Hell on Earth, I think, the world is kind of reunited in some level. Civilization is rebuilt. You go into space.
Yes.
They go through a space tunnel. They establish a colony. There are problems with the space tunnel. Contact with the colony is lost for a long period of time, and then civilization comes back to it. So you have this kind of friction between the power on Earth and the colony that had to be on its own for a while and doesn't super like Earth coming back. And then there's the aliens that are around there anyway that didn't like anybody showing up. So that's kind of the situation you're stepping into. But again, I like that it's all the normal tropes of a sci-fi of that era,
Plus,
but
it's,
Weird
plus
West.
it's bringing back that Western theme of encroaching colonization, frontier. It's all there, and we're making the same mistakes over and over.
So I
again,
feel like I just need to
even
make
in
the
world.
Planescape reference again of
Yes.
the rule of three and the unity of rings.
There you go. I got it. Hopefully you did too.
They didn't.
If not, I'll explain it.
So you're very excited about this.
I am very excited about it. I like Deadlands a lot. I've always liked it. This was a series that didn't get a lot of love at the towards the end of it, and it deserved a lot more than it got. I'm glad to see it back.
And one of the pledge levels has a box set, like the Marshall's box. Is that just for Lost Colony, or is that a Deadlands thing in general?
I think that's just for Lost Colony, but
Yeah.
if it's not, I missed it completely. If it's got everything, that would be amazing.
Sweet.
But
So,
you can still get all the other stuff real cheap. So.
so if you love Savage Worlds or you love Deadlands, Lost Colony.
Lost
many
Colony,
days?
Savage Worlds, Deadlands. I said
Probably
two
3 or
awesome
4 days.
things that should make it
3
enough
days.
right there.
3 days
3
left.
days.
And the next.
The next Kickstarter is Capone, the Business of Prohibition,
Oh.
with 4 days left.
And
That
yet
is-
somehow this game is adorable.
It is
It
absolutely
actually is
adorable.
really nice.
Like I can't figure out
you
why
gotta
this game
smuggle
is so
them
adorable.
alcohol.
It's adorable because you build a little cardboard car to smuggle your bottles of booze in to your little cardboard building.
You have
that on
cardboard
the-
storefronts.
yeah, the storefront in the front, it's a perfectly normal storefront. On
And
the
then the
back, it's
back,
a
it's
filthy,
speak-
seedy bar.
Speakeasy.
Uh-huh.
Speakeasy.
So-
and the bottles are colorful.
Yeah. So like it's an adorable little game that is apparently a super cutthroat like card drafting, auction bidding, like back alley
and
trading.
there's no turn
turns.
taking. It's just like you
It's
just
just like
do stuff
Yep.
when you do
trade.
it.
Yep. Like that-
Check out the video on the Kickstarter because it's actually very good at
Yep.
telling you how to play the game.
Yeah, the video like very strongly pitched. Like there's no turns, there's no rules on the deals you can make.
Nope.
So like you can trade, like you'll have cards, you'll have sets. You could trade customers, you could trade bottles, you could trade money.
Can you trade cars?
No.
That would be
I think there's
awesome.
only one car.
There's only one car, but you can push it to your opponent or
Yep.
not. You can drive your car.
I will absolutely push my car towards your storefront if you give me a thing.
Yep.
Made that sound dirty somehow. Okay.
So, but it's a very, very cute game.
Yes.
You know, if kind of high speed like auctioning things like that sounds intriguing to you,
Oh,
you
wait.
seem real excited.
No, I just realized. Is this the cutest Kickstarter board game
You know, for this week it might be.
of this week?
I think it is, which is probably an indictment of the other Kickstarters we have more than
We
an
don't have a lot of
endorsement.
adorable Kickstarters,
No,
but I think
there's
it's
a
because
lot of-
Emma wasn't here to fight for them.
Yeah, that's true. But it's very cute. And
This
yeah,
is
you know,
the-
it's the cuteness of smuggling
far as I'm concerned-
alcohol in a mafioso.
Yeah, this is the
kind of,
cutest Kickstarter game of the week.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, it's official.
It's a very cute mafia.
Oh, come on, they're adorable.
All adorable. Al Capone. He's just like a big teddy bear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then another thing, like
Big, murderous, misogynist teddy bear.
this was another example of a Kickstarter that I thought was structured really, really well.
Yes.
Because it just has a section that's like, this is what's unique or special about this game. And so very quickly you can just look at the project and say, do those things appeal to me? Then I'm in for this game. If not, then I'm not.
Buy it just to build the little cardboard storefronts and the little cardboard car.
And
that
it
too.
opens up and you just drop like you could look like an alcoholic with a
Yeah,
lot
so
of
like
bottles.
it is probably worth noting that the car that the alcohol bottles come in,
Yeah.
you stack the bottles on top, so it's like a milk truck, I think is what they call it,
Yeah.
because it's hiding the alcohol. But then you can, when you use the bottle of booze, you can put it in the front, and it goes into a tray that you pull out at the back of it.
Yeah.
So it's a whole cycle. It's a
You
cycle
open
of
it
life.
up and it dumps all the bottles out.
That is adorable.
Yes.
All right.
Cute.
Speaking of adorable and cute,
We made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
I think you have to play that character when we play the next game. So I want your adorable Al Capone, the Nosferatu mafioso, to play in Vampire the Masquerade Blood Feud. Blood Feud!
Blood Feud!
A mega board game.
A mega board game. It's not even a board game, it's a mega board game.
Oh, before I get 4 days left for.
For Capone?
For Capone.
Yep.
Yes.
So also with 4 days left
Yes.
is Vampire. And this was one of those projects that was like, if anybody else wants to cover it, that's cool.
And we were like, no, Derek,
No,
you
Derek.
can have it. This
It was
is
very
yours.
obvious. Like he's like I know you guys know about me, but like I'm open to
I know you know about my vampire thing, but
you
But
go to
I'll
your-
let you guys go
Guess you
ahead.
go to your White Wolf Anonymous game.
Like I,
Hi, my name
that's
is
the
Derek.
tone. The
I love
tone
Vampire.
I heard when I read that. I was like, that's the tone of. Yeah, I guess, but I mean, like I'm open. to
it's fine, it's cool.
I'm a
Bye.
denizen of the world of darkness.
So, on that note, Vampire the Masquerade Blood Feud, a mega board game.
Yes.
So, if anybody's not familiar with the idea of a mega game, it's kind of a combination of like a LARP mixed with a board game, I think is the way that I would usually describe it.
Yeah, it's
Where-
like,
Okay.
it's like mock UN. Like you ever did mock UN, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
Mock UN, yes, okay.
Yes.
I was trying to figure out like MACHU.
No,
Mock UN.
Yep.
I got
Like
it.
Yep.
it's,
No, that
you
that
know,
took
in
me a minute.
schools or like when you used to play like pretend to be the lawyer and yell at people.
Wow, every week we get a little insight into the
Yeah, it's
history
like
of
we
Banzai.
learn little tidbits about you every week, and they're always so interesting.
I was like, I got salutatorian in school. You wouldn't guess, but I was smart.
Wait, you were? You are.
You are smart.
No. You know what? It's after school. I just like, yeah, give up. I don't need to do those grades anymore.
Banzai,
Yes.
spoiler alert, that was all of us.
Yeah. It turns out none of that stuff matters.
Oh, what?
I was turning in homework after I graduated. Anyway.
Sorry.
So the mega board game is very much like a LARP mixed with a board game. Like it is kind of like Mach-UN if there were like a board game element you could also turn to in addition to the debates of like, hey, you should side with us on this issue. It's very important. Blah blah blah. You could then like go and play the board game side of that.
Yes.
That's how you would form alliances. That's how you would make decisions for your faction or something like that.
And in this version of Mach-UN, Portugal can make illusions with their mind.
Yep. No, I think that's more Romania.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Romania, yeah.
Not Romania. Not Romania.
I mean, they came through
The
there.
Romani are not from Romania.
I understand that, but that's where the Ravnos. Anyway, we're getting into the detail of the World of Darkness.
Look, the Giovanni.
So you're going to have this huge game, and it scales from 4 players to 32 players.
And
Yes.
this is the version I want to see of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where you break up into factions. So what you would have is in the ideal world, you have 32 players in this, and you would have a faction that would be the Ventru.
Yes.
And there would be multiple Ventru players, each of whom have very specific roles and interact with the rules of the game in different ways. And they have to figure out what they want to do as a faction, while another group of people might be the Tremere, and another group of people might be the Second Inquisition.
Yes.
Because the game does have a lot more mortal and non-vampire factions than I would have expected.
Yes.
So it seems to be less of not just inner vampire conflicts, but very much vampire versus human conflicts, which kind of ties into a lot of the changes they made with 5th edition. Anyway, the themes have changed a little bit there.
Right.
So it's intriguing to me. Like
Yes.
I love mega games. Every time I've played with them, they're fantastic.
I love mega games.
I've never
usually
played a
run
mega
them.
game.
There's a couple other ones that I have that we should absolutely play sometime.
we should
If we
totally...
can get like 30 people together.
Oh, 30 people? Wait, you really need 30 people?
It really helps. Like 18, I think, for some of the games I have is kind of the minimum.
Okay.
But this is one that's trying to be designed to be able to scale up and down. So you can
Yes.
play it with, like, as a normal board game, quote unquote, but you can play it, incorporate more and more people at a much, much higher player count.
I feel like games like these always need to play with like more than 10 plus people.
Ideally. I mean, like, it seems like they're really trying to make one that will bridge the gap.
And if anybody was really interested on learning more about Vampire the Masquerade, Gen Con, we actually interviewed some people when this was like a version of it was happening. A mega game was happening at Gen Con.
Yeah,
and we happened to come across.
They ran this at Gen Con.
Yes.
And it was very amusing to me that the first 2 sessions are not sold out. Attendance was not fantastic.
Yeah, but the last
But then, like, from that point onward, pretty much every session was sold out.
Word
for
of
the
mouth
rest of the weekend.
spread very quickly on that particular game.
Oh, great way to break attention to Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I'm a vampire.
So, like, as a kind of an explanation of how this works, the game seems to have like 4 stations. So you have like a council where you do the politics, the negotiation, the planning, the strategy. It's where the teams might come together and kind of work with each other. There's a marketplace, a separate section of the game where you would go to level up your character, to get new titles and things like that. There's the orders board.
Leveling up a vampire is scary. There's
Usually
really only
involves
one
murder.
way that it happens. You're not allowed to do it.
So there's also the orders board where you would be, like playing cards, issuing orders, trying to use your minions. And then there's also a cityscape that a little territory control kind of mini game. So you have all these different game components.
Yes.
They're in another game you might just be on the same board, but the mega game really kind of tries to make these mini games their own thing, and they spread them out.
And I can still be Al Capone?
Yes.
Yes, you could be Al Capone. I mean, does this version? I think for a lot of mega games, at least for how I like to play them, I like to put a little bit of effort and confirm that I can just bring a prop that isn't necessarily
Don't bring
cheap.
blood. Don't bring blood.
No, not blood. But I mean like a negotiation prop that isn't really part of the game, but the people won't say it isn't.
Well, I mean, they specifically talk about having a story mode that
Yeah.
allows you to, break the game a little bit.
Yeah, I like doing those kind of.
Well, so that's where some of the LARP elements come in. Is that one of the other nature or kind of elements of a mega game is that you usually have someone running the game.
Yes.
So you as a player can say the rules don't say I can do this, but can I do this? Like the rules don't say I can make an alliance with the other side and offer them a bribe in some way, but
But
can
they
I do
don't
it?
say you can't.
Yes.
Yeah, they don't say you can't. So there's like it doesn't specify the rules, Like, oh, then you could bring tiny bottles of liquor, and then be like, hey,
Chat says Al Capone vampire gangster in Rift.
in Rifts. Oh, nice.
That would work.
I mean, Mexico
work.
is the vampire
That's
kingdom.
that's Mexico.
So I'm very excited about this. So when we get it, because I'm
playing
obviously
it with
backed
you.
it, we're all
I'm
playing.
gonna give this a try. I've not played a mega game, but I will play a mega
You're
game.
gonna love it.
This also sounds like the perfect game to buy. Play, maybe 4 players, get used to it, and then bring it to a convention.
Plus, I'm gonna
and run for a huge crowd.
And if it's not Al Capone, it's gonna be some squeaky voiced vampire.
I did the whole like deep end approach where I just like went, all right, what's the biggest one that I can join? All right, let's just jump into
What
it.
generation even are you? Kendra, do you even lift?
Lift.
I like how you're going to continue fleshing this character
Yeah,
out.
no, I'm
Yeah.
almost done with him.
Almost
All right,
done.
I've got
well,
traits picked out.
We are done with this Kickstarter, I think.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
But
we can be finished with this Kickstarter.
the next Kickstarter, going from vampires, let's go to the fantasy realm
Ah.
with a Vaesen, I have problems with word, a Nordic horror role-playing game. So if you're really into like Scandinavian, Nordic kind of
Like
mythic
folklore.
Oh, yeah.
folklore,
Yeah.
then you would love this game. It's basically 5 days left. It's a role-playing game that takes place in the 1800s, where you're a group of people that can see these creatures of the unknown, and you can be like, and then you try to save the rest of humanity from these creatures basically taking over, killing a bunch of folks. You could think of it as the Hellboys group, the BPRD. The Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense. So it incorporates all of these Selkies and all of these creatures.
Also, famous groups like the Men in Black and the Brotherhood of Celestial Torch. A bunch of these groups. Basically, it's Men in Black, but
It's a very classic trope.
It's a very classic
this,
trope.
You're playing at kind of the birth of, I think, the founding of society in Scandinavia to do that in that region.
there are things that go bump in the night. You are what goes bump back.
Yes, exactly. So other than you play as hold on, I went through this. You can't. So the real point of it is more of an investigational game because each creature has their own way of defeating them. So if you're really into investigation type games where you have to plan out how are you going to find.
Sounds very Monster of the Week, where it's
and the rule set definitely plays into that.
Yeah.
It's
Definitely. And the more exciting news about this is that the people who are basically running this Kickstarter, who are developing this game, are called the Free League, which are creators from makers of Aliens, Forbidden Lands, Tales from the
Coriolis.
Loop.
Yeah, Tales from the Loop, which was huge last year.
So it's very what is called atmospheric horror. So it's not so oh, I'm super powered, I can go ahead and punch these monsters.
Yeah.
It's really you have to your characters don't really have a lot of life really, and you're very fragile human beings. You're squishy.
Oh, that does sound fun.
Squishy human beings. But you can.
Did I say that too loud?
You did.
Okay.
Too loud.
But
that does sound
I think
fun.
you turned off your sarcasm meter too.
you gotta
gosh.
turn it down just a bit. I don't for me as a role player, I like games that don't make you I am ultra powerful beast man mega person.
Yeah, as a role player,
can
Although
punch
now I do
people.
want to play the game that gives me the option to literally write on my character sheet, ultra powerful beast man mega person. I think Rifts might be the only one.
it might be.
Riv is-
Actually, I'm pretty sure that's a standard OCC.
Yep.
But yeah, so it has 4 or 5 days left, and if you're into that, hey, let's start it in and you want to learn more about this fairy tales. If you're really into fairy tales too. it's a game.
If 19th, early 20th century, Nordic folklore.
So Nisms and Selkies.
Yeah, so
That's really what we get.
Building humanity's defense against the supernatural. And again, Free League has been kind of rocketing on the scene with an amazing series of RPGs.
Yes.
So this is going to be great. If that premise appeals to you, you're going to want to check out their project.
They have a good track record.
I don't normally love horror games or games where I'm just a squishy little thing that'll die any second, because that's not why I play those games.
I have to admit that whenever a World of Darkness game comes up and someone's like, "Let's play Mortals," I'm like, "No."
But it releases the you gotta have the tension.
See, the
My frail mortal body.
No, see, the tension to me, the tension I love is, here, player, here's all this power. What do you do with it?
That's a huge thing.
But this is a different kind of game.
Yeah, now this is a game where,
But it sounds like it's going to be perfect for like one-shots. It's going to be perfect for Monster of the Week things.
Yes.
Because if you have to go, like think of X-Files, but in like 1890s Sweden.
Yes.
I mean, if that pitch doesn't sell you, then nothing will.
That sounds cool.
So 5 days left.
5 days left.
With 6 days left, and I have to say, I was actually surprised the number of Kickstarters that are ending on Thanksgiving.
Isn't that weird?
Oh, that is.
Like, there were a lot.
Oh, because everybody's going to be like, discount.
It's because people
I
didn't,
guess, but
it's
no,
'cause
but
people
it's-
didn't think ahead when they launched.
Yeah,
is
yeah.
what
It's
happened.
the day
Yeah.
after Thanksgiving that you give all the discounts.
No.
No. Well,
and-
Cyber
but-
Monday, if it's on Kickstarter, would be Cyber Monday.
Yeah, but like
Never
no
end a
one's,
Kickstarter on Black Friday.
Yeah,
That's
but
a terrible
like,
idea.
I know. That's what I mean. It's like no one is going
People
to be
are
paying
doing
attention
real
to
shopping that
Kickstarter on
day.
those 2 days.
Well,
So-
then you just got to tell them, like, hey, what are you doing? You got to fix your,
Yep. Everybody, listen to us once again this week.
This is
the true knowledge being
the
dropped
true
here.
knowledge. Us.
But with 6 days left,
Yes.
we have Arceus, which is our capital KBG Kickstarter board game of the week.
Yes.
There were some contenders for the throne,
There were.
but this one won out.
a lot of
And
victories.
so this is yet another cooperative, story-driven, encounter combat, miniature-heavy, exciting game thing.
It's the same people that made Seven Wonders, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not even notice that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's probably just going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Because Seven Wonders is pretty cool.
Seven Wonders was great. But the real thing that struck out at me for this one was that it's not kind of generic fantasy themed.
No.
So
Yeah.
so this is like steampunk archaeologists delving into Egypt and waking up monsters that are better left kind of asleep.
So it's the Mummy.
It's the mummy.
It's the Mummy.
It's a mummy, but with more minis.
Right.
All the mummy.
And probably maybe airships or something?
Greater variety of enemies, I think,
Yeah, it's not all the Mummy.
and scarabs.
And
Yeah.
scarabs.
So
Ooh.
wow, both of you.
Yeah, well,
This is the evil side.
The dark side
The
thinks
dark
alike.
side knows what
The dark
does.
side doesn't like bugs.
Notice how the light side is getting much smaller.
Yeah.
Have you been eating Emma? Is that what you're saying?
No, I was saying, hey, have you lost weight?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So, Arceus is, again, it's another one of those Kickstarter board games. You are going to have a story that you're going to go through. You're going to go fight in an encounter. Your characters are going to improve, all that kind of stuff. But the real kind of distinction is that art style, the Egyptian theme, the steampunk theme. So if you have been looking for something, Gloomhaven-y or Edge of Darkness, I think, or the other kind of really big games that you go through those adventures with, but you are not as into the typical fantasy tropes.
Yeah, and a lot of people aren't. We've seen most of this stuff before. This is something a little bit different, a little bit newer. It's got a coat of paint on it that I'm not used to seeing, so it makes me interested in it.
It seems like they might have a little more emphasis on mystery and investigation too, because it's archaeologists. You're going into tombs and whatnot, so you might need to find a little more puzzles as well.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh, puzzles.
Puzzles are cool.
Puzzles.
Yep, and that is 6 days left. So when you're eating turkey, you should stop and make sure that you've backed that.
All right.
Turkey.
Done and done.
So our final Kickstarter of the week was one of the other contenders. So at first glance, this looks like a Kickstarter board game of the week.
Right, but you changed your mind on that.
I did.
Very quickly
did.
after taking a closer look.
Yep. So first, it's not like a story, adventure, scenario, combat game. It's a dudes on a map game.
That's right. That's
Yep.
what you called it specifically. This is not a Kickstarter board game. This is a dudes on a map game.
Yep.
And I said, what is that?
It's basically a derisive way to talk about like war games.
Yep.
That's what it is.
You've got a map. You've got
a war
units. You move around it.
Lots of sweet looking minis.
It is. It's really
I mean,
cool.
it looks really cool.
They
Yep.
do. They
And
look
then again, the
symbolic.
other thing that distinguishes it from Kickstarter board game is it's not a generic fantasy thing.
Nope.
They just took real countries from Europe
And made them into generic fantasy-like characters.
Yep. And just
Yeah.
gave them giant monsters to fight with each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you have the Kingdom of Sweden.
Yeah.
And everybody knows how it has a giant with horns coming off of its head.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Totally. That
Obviously.
is not
Yeah.
at all a misinterpretation of history.
So if you ever wanted to see what giant, like 4-story tall monsters the Kingdom of Sweden, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the Ottoman Empire, the Tsardom of Russia, the Holy Roman Empire would summon together.
Yeah.
And the Cossacks.
Yeah, well, the Cossacks, like they're they didn't get a giant thing. They're not a core faction. They're like some mercenaries you can hire in.
That
or something
sounds
like that.
totally right.
Yeah, that sounds like they got
They're
mounts.
just killers with stupid hats.
Yeah.
They got mounts.
So I'm just scrolling through and I'm like, oh, that's a neat flag. Isn't that the Swedish flag? Oh my God, it is the Swedish flag. So it's a weird take on it. But
It's cool. It's real countries with giant monsters. What's not to love?
So
Yeah.
you're running like a kingdom management take over the board kind of game, basically. And
Finally, the true might of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth will be known.
Yep. So if that appeals to you,
Said no one.
Do they have a hammer at least? If it's the
no. That was the.
I mean, the Kingdom of Sweden probably has the hammer.
You're thinking of the Tsardom of Russia, because even then it was the revolution that brought the. Maybe that'll be an expansion.
big expansion? Haha! With monsters with a World
In this
War,
version, everything
World
sucks.
Oh.
So again, looking at this kind of reminded me. I got a little bit of a vibe of Scythe. If you've never played
Scythe,
it.
yeah.
So like when you look at Scythe, you're like, oh man, that's a combat game. I'm taking over territory. That is absolutely not how that game works. But it has a bunch of little meeple or little
Awesome
minis that
figurines,
you can
yeah.
move around. This is kind of the same way. It's like, what if Scythe actually was about combat? Then maybe you'd get something like this.
All right.
Ah.
So for you fans of the idea of Scythe, this might be your game.
What you imagine Scythe could have been if there's fighting.
And those are the Kickstarters that we have to go
Those
through
are the
this week.
Kickstarters, and you know what? That's it
it.
for news.
Oh.
We are out of news. Nothing else happened this week, guys.
Nope.
So you're super lucky there. We gave you everything that you need to know to get through your life.
Yes.
Unless you want to know more about things that are coming out, in which case you can stick around after this for the new release rundown. You want to play some games, you can play with the Brothers Murph on Monday nights. And if you want to just talk about Magic with somebody who knows what the hell they're talking about, Peter's the fireside chats are on Wednesday.
Peter and Emma.
Anything else that I'm missing?
Come join us again.
On Fridays.
Every Friday for Table Takes presented by Gen Con. I'm Christian, I'm here with Banzai and Derek, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.